Good morning. Once again, apologies that we are a little bit late. Uh, but today, I have no excuse, I must say. So here we are once again. We are already in August. That's, for me, kind of unbelievable because it seems like just this pandemic and the lockdown that happened, everything back in March was just yesterday started. Anyway, well, we're not out of it at all. The world has actually already overtaken 19 million infections. It's on the way very soon. I'm sure there will be 20 million. And in the United States, at the moment, there are just about 1,000 fatalities every day. It's really quite serious still. Very, very, very serious. Well, I'm not going to sort of labor on that now because this is known to all of us. I just wanted to share one little vignette which is indicative of the ridiculous situation in a certain way we are in. In Georgia, their schools were opening, and in one of the schools, a group of students were actually suspended from school because they complained that there was too much crowding, there wasn't enough social distancing. It's remarkable. And we'll see what happens in terms of an increase in infection rate, simply because their alarm was not heeded. Okay. I know. I have over there saying that keep going. Yeah. I will. I take a little, again, coffee. That helps me out. Okay. I begin today, again with an aside, and this will come here. About two composers. Whoops. We're getting a little too casual here, maybe. Again, who I didn't know before. I'm, in a certain way, embarrassed to say, but who are quite wonderful composers and who actually are still virtually unknown. One is William Dawson, whose dates were from 1899 to 1990. And he was born here. I have this written down here. He was born in Anniston, Alabama, but at the age of 13, he ran away from home. Why? Because he wanted an education. He entered the Tuskegee Institute. He supported himself completely. And he actually, in 1931, this is already, he's quite a mature adult, he organized the School of Music there and taught there, conducted the choir for 25 years. And what I found out was that his choir was actually extremely well known and performed for both Presidents Herbert Hoover and Franklin Roosevelt. That's good. In 1934, his symphony, which he titled the Negro Folk Symphony, was premiered by Leopold Stokowski and the Philadelphia Orchestra. It's actually a wonderful piece, and there are other works of his which are also quite quite interesting, quite beautiful. So I want to try to play this for you, a little bit of it, of course. Okay. Here, we do this again. Somehow I always set this up and then the name is in the beginning. Yeah. William Levy Dawson. Okay, great. So it should work out. What I have to do is find it. Yeah, here we go. Okay, and the first thing is and it's not working, so hold it. Stop. Wait. Still not working. I know. I have to be better organized. And my computer doesn't work either very well right now either. Why is nothing working? I don't know. It's tremendously annoying. Okay, this all should be correct. Let me do this again. Okay, now it should work. Still not working today. Anyway, we do. Okay, just a little vignette from that, but it's a wonderful piece, very interesting composer, very skilled composer who we should know about. Yeah. Now, another one here, I get my notes because these are, again, people. Oh, where did I put my notes? Yeah, that's really. Oh gosh, here we go. Yeah, another very fascinating person was Florence Prince, who was born in 1887 and died in 1953. And as it said in her bio, she was the first African American woman to be recognized as a symphonic composer, and the first African American to be played, whose composition, I'm sorry, was played by a major orchestra. She was actually a brilliant person who graduated from high school, and when she was 14, enrolled in the New England Conservatory of Music. At that time, it's interesting, she pretended that she was actually Mexican to avoid the prejudice which people had against African Americans that time. And she graduated in 1906 with all the honors that she could have had. Okay. Now, I think you can find out more about her yourselves, of course. It's a wonderful biography. I would once say, though, that she was a great friend and a colleague, both of Langston Hughes and the wonderful contralto Marian Anderson. And they supported her, and at their urging, in 1932, she submitted works to the, what is this called, the Wanamaker Foundation competition, right? And her symphony in E minor, that's her first symphony, actually won first prize there, and then 1933 it was performed by the Chicago Symphony under Frederick Stock. So I'm going to play a little bit of that now. Okay. I have to take this out and find it. Okay. And I have a problem here also. That's right. Okay, let's put this way down. Okay. I'm going to go switch to the little bit of the finale, which is I particularly like. Oh, come on, come on, come on. Sorry. Okay. Now this was her first symphony in E minor. Now, what was interesting about Florence Price is her compositional development. She was always a wonderful orchestrator, but I play a little bit of her third symphony, which she wrote actually quite soon after this. Okay. And this is, sorry, here we are. Very original. Okay. Anyway, this is it's a large major work, but she was actually, in my opinion, quite an important composer and should be recognized today, but of course is virtually unknown. There are many. I will continue with this throughout the weeks a little bit there because I'm finding so many interesting people. Some I knew already, and some, like Florence Price, I actually had no idea of her existence. I feel terrible about that. Okay.
Question.
Yes.
Did they compose for some piece for clarinet?
Unfortunately, I didn't find anything for the clarinet. But that doesn't mean that we cannot transcribe things. And that's something that I'm have done a little bit, not with these composers, but with some who I will actually feature a little later, and also I'm planning to do. And all of you can actually at least dabble in that. I think transcription, I should say, is something which at one time actually, not too long ago, sort of looked down upon that. But in fact, there's a great history of transcription, and someone like Bach transcribed his own compositions of Vivaldi, etc., etc. And Other people, all composers actually did transcriptions. And I think for us, the idea of increasing our repertoire through transcription is actually a wonderful thing. And there will be a live stream I'll be doing, which is really geared toward transcription. What am I saying? I can't say. Oh God, I need coffee again. Impossible. Transcription. Yes, exactly. Okay. And now to the basic topic, I should say, at hand. And this has to do with these icons of expression, as I was saying. And also, when I actually forgot something in my iPad, so I'm going to have to get it. Okay, but which I don't need right now, but I will need it eventually. And so I want to find connections between pieces of different eras, and basically I want to focus on Carl Nielsen's concerto for clarinet, which is a tremendously original and very misunderstood piece of music. Thank you. That's it. Okay, but how do we begin? I said I will begin with Mozart, and it's often a good idea to begin with Mozart. I think somehow everybody does. I don't know if I mentioned earlier or not, but of course, you know, this is, I put this over here. Mozart has been used to enhance the growth of plants, to have cows give milk which was sweeter and in greater quantities, etc., etc. And I think this is going to be a little bit of a live stream of detours, but anyway, one very kind of interesting little conversation I had was with, I don't remember if he was a biologist or a medical researcher, a Japanese fellow, who was also an amateur clarinetist and a music lover, and he set out to see the effect of Mozart and other composers on plants. And I forgot right now what the plant was, and I have his photos that he sent me at some place, but I can't find them. Anyway, that's all just preliminary stuff. So he started with he had one plant. He had listened to, I think it was Mozart's Magic Flute. Another plant was the Control. That had no music. And the third plant, he had listened to Bruckner's Seventh Symphony. Now, as he showed me the photos, the first plant, listening to Mozart, grew incredibly. It was unbelievably lush. The second plant was very normal. And the poor Bruckner plant died. Oh well. I actually liked the music of Bruckner, so I was quite sad about that. But once again, here Mozart is Mozart. And I'm also always amused that I saw an advertisement a few years ago about music in schools and how that is good for your brain. And of course, what music were they playing in the advertisement? But the music of Mozart. Okay, that's enough of that. So, why am I actually going to talk about Mozart? I'm just going to talk very little because we've had a lot of Mozart in these live streams, and this has to do with, in his clarinet concerto, the nature of opera and the gestures that are in the opera are very present in the concerto. And the concerto, I'm just going to play on an A clarinet now. I don't play on the basset. I think, or should I? No, I was told no, I should not. Okay. These gestures that we have in the concerto are very operatic, and they all are these kind of icons, as I said, of expression, which were not unique to Mozart, but were part of musical language of the time. And it's just the way Mozart used them was very special and very, very compelling. So, that's not Mozart. That's just A major arpeggio. But it's a prelude to the concerto, of course. We have this part here. And there is an icon that's here. Let me go back to this. Then the gesture involved in this is incredibly clear. And what Mozart is doing with this of course came to Chopin afterwards. That you see. So this is actually an iconic gesture, I would say, in music, and Mozart uses it then that way. So the A minor that we have, he could have just done that, but no, he has and then and then this. And then it's not enough to just, and then after that we have this. And that's totally different music. Yeah. It's as if we have first, sometimes, woe is me, in opera. I don't know what the future will bring. And then, from over here, the next character comes out. But, have no fear. I am here. Okay. Yeah. And everyone's laughing at my poor acting, of course. But there, all of a sudden, and if we look at this carefully, we are back in A minor, and this is not really a connection, let's say. This is goes like that. So this is very much an instance where Mozart, in a very operatic way, is bringing in, just in a concerto, two different characters. So, and then, what happens there, so, everything calms down. And we move into C major. And that's actually we have that kind of progression, which is actually a little bit avant-garde at the time, perhaps. But Mozart does this in such a smooth way. But we should know that these are different expressive gestures which imply, in fact, different characters. Then let's go on just a little bit. And then we have here. And then what happens there? Then all of a sudden, the music changes completely that way. Now that explains, of course, Mozart's change of articulation. That's why in the beginning we have... That's right, that's right. And then that happens there. So, all of these gestures here are gestures which were not, as I mentioned before, unique to Mozart, but the way he puts them together is a product of his genius, I would say. Okay, I think from there I move on now. Although, should I talk more about Mozart? Maybe not. I'm told no, I should not. Okay, so I will not. Okay, and now I move from Mozart to Elliott Carter, who, as I mentioned earlier, in one of the early live streams, felt a kinship to Mozart. So, that's it. And here we go. I think I'm going to do this. It's not ideal, but it's probably good enough. I think it'll be all right. Okay, here, well, I will take the music. Now, if I can find it. Otherwise, I will. Yeah, here we go. I can. Okay. I can. Did I show this to everyone or not? Maybe not. Yeah. So I just show you, because this is one of his manuscripts that he sent me. Oh God, yeah, it's always very funny. As I went to show this to the microphone. Here. Yeah. Okay. Just a little, just to see it. Yeah. That's whenever I can. I love to play from manuscripts because they give information which is outside of the actual notes, just simply by the writing of them. That's why I also always suggest to everyone, if you can play from a manuscript, you should do that. That's great. So anyway, now here he has actually gestures which are, he is, in a certain way, I would say, has refined these expressive icons. So even though his language has nothing to do with tonality and nothing to do with the sort of tradition of musical icons, let's say, that I should say that if we go back to Mozart, they still have the same meaning in a way. And okay, and I'll explain. Is this the right clarinet? Yeah, I can never tell sometimes. Okay, so I go here because I want to show you as well. That's why I have the music out. Yeah, I keep this here. Okay. So one thing is, for instance, here we have this is an iconic gesture. Now it could be that Carter just put this by accident, but I don't believe so at all, because of its placement in the piece. And here, I show you right here, just right there, right there. This has to do there. Okay, I'm showing the wrong thing as well. Okay, it's this part here. And people who have played this piece or have heard it understand that. Now, why do I say that it's absolutely there? The way he writes it is completely and consciously there as what should I say? How do I say this? As an iconic gesture. Yes, right. That's it, and that's because that connects the two parts of this piece. Well, there are more than two parts, I should say, but the first section to the second section, and as I mentioned before in the first one, I'm a little bit tongue-tied always in these live streams right now. I don't know. Maybe I need more sleep or something. Anyway, we have two characters here. We have the sentimental character and the capricious character here. So again, in this piece, we have a sense of opera. Oh, and then, no. And he separates the music in very significant and very obvious ways here. And then at this point here, after all this, and it's not simply an accident or a matter of the necessity of his compositional technique that he ends with this minor third. He does that, of course, and he even emphasizes that with tenuto mark because it has a particular sense. You know, but you know, so but it's oh, so we have, and then he actually from there, this sentimental turns in to this capricious character. There, okay. And I think the other thing, though, I just want to mention here, just has to do within this piece, this feeling of appoggiatura. And of course, the appoggiatura is the quintessential icon of expression that we have. And as I was, in a way, showing last week with the pieces I played, how the appoggiatura, no matter what style of music, whatever it is there in a very fundamental way. Always happens. Get rid of this. Yeah. I think this is some pharmacy from India or something. It's crazy. The things we get. Okay, can actually people hear me? Because I have a feeling that I'm mumbling a little bit. It's all right? Okay, good. Okay. And the appoggiatura in this piece, he has both in long term and in short term. So we look here, and we see, first of all, we have these twelfths or fifths, we could say. And one of them, of course, goes F sharp, C sharp, and that resolves to the F to C. So you can see in a certain sense that we have here. Here, I go back to the piano. He goes from here, there, and then let's say the F to C here. And now if we put them together in a certain way, we actually, there we have that, and we have this, and the middle of the piece is in between these two, is the G. So that is essential appoggiatura that sort of outlines the middle of this whole thing, which then moves down to this, and then finally to that. So that's a kind of interesting compositional detail. It's something that probably the theorist Schenker would appreciate, for instance. But let's then go to the local kind of aspect of this piece. The local his creation of melody, which involves also these fifths, but then moving to seconds. We have that, for instance, and then going on, and then there it's the so that melody gets created with the fifth, which then resolves down that way, and that's in a certain sense can be looked at as the opposite of something like something of that. So we have there, and then so its melody is made up of these gestures and then the appoggiaturas, which create the motion, I say, and then the expression of this. And why do we know that, in fact, Carter is thinking along these expressive lines? Very simple. If we have here, this is the passage, I have my fan, you can see right there, right? So he writes first espressivo, and then his dynamic markings are very specific. Okay. So this we just touch on Carter. And now I want to move to the main subject of today's live stream, and that is the Nielsen Concerto, Carl Nielsen's Concerto. Now, this is a piece which I found has been very much misunderstood, misinterpreted, and one of the reasons it has been is because it's not so easy. It's rather awkward as a work. And how should I say? Very often, let me get a clarinet here. I take a clarinet, this one. Here. It is, its performance, as I hear it, has been kind of like an exercise in weightlifting. So you know, because Nielsen, like, oh yeah, you know, and you go, Nielsen, I made it. Okay, but the piece is very different from that. The other part of the piece that is misunderstood is that many people look at it in kind of that it's put together in a kind of, maybe you can even say, random way, or almost as if it's a way where he's not planned things in a very sort of carefully compositional way, but sort of a sort of stream of consciousness or something of that sort. And in fact, that's not at all true. It's a piece which is incredibly and intricately composed in a very, very structural way. I would like to mention now that a lot of my understanding, of this work, and a lot of the impetus that I sort of came to me to begin to look at it in a very, I should say, perhaps deep way, it came from two wonderful Danish clarinetists. One is Jens Sko, and even more so was John Kruse. Yeah, I'll write them down. Yeah, for people, but or it's not. Don't worry about it. We'll get that. I think. Yes. So first, a little bit of a background about this, and if John, for instance, if he's actually listening to this, he can send me a note correcting what I have perhaps misremembered or misinterpreted, but to quote or to paraphrase Harold Bloom, the great literary critic, sort of misreading can be a very creative process, and also to again paraphrase the brilliant child psychologist, a very important theoretician in the field of psychology. This is Piaget. That misremembering is an essential feature of our intellectual development. So, if I've misremembered, perhaps it was to find something new in the piece, perhaps. Okay, but please let me know if you're there, if I actually have misremembered. I know. I have to. Okay. So, to speak about this work, we first, I go all the way back to 1921, and there, Nielsen was very friendly with members of the Copenhagen Wind Quintet, whose members were Paul Hagemann, who was the flutist, Sven Christian Fellow, the oboist, Olga Oxenvad, and my apologies to all the Danes, because I'm sure I'm mispronouncing in a really horrendous way everybody's name. Hans Sørensen, French horn, and Knud Lassen bassoon. And they were played with the pianist Christian Christiansen. Oxenvad was the clarinetist. He was perhaps the best friend of Nielsen, and he was the oldest member of this ensemble and was sort of the leader of this group. Now there's a wonderful reminiscence of the oboist, Sven Christian Fellow, and I read a little bit about that. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Or maybe I should. I'll read a bit more about that. Yes. He said, as he writes, the four of us, without the flutist, were up at Christiansen's practicing Mozart. And the telephone was there too. This is 1921, so the telephone was not that old at that time. And it was Carl Nielsen. And what is that I hear in the background, he said to Christiansen. And Christiansen mentioned, oh, it's Mozart, of course. Here we go. Here's Mozart again. And Nielsen then replied, "I'm on my way," and he came. He knew each of us very well, as he knew the constellation, the quintet as a group, and particularly this constellation in connection with Mozart. It is definitely no secret that he, Nielsen, loved Mozart, and one hardly needs to thumb through much of his scores before one discovers his intimate knowledge of each and every wind instrument's part. The four of us, without the flutist, were up practicing Mozart at that time. Okay, and when he heard this Mozart piece in the telephone, it was actually the Sinfonia Concertante, which is for four winds and orchestra. This is, of course, in the version with oboe, clarinet, bassoon, French horn, and piano instead of orchestra. And of course, as it turns out, this work is not exactly by Mozart, but enough of it was by Mozart that it still has a Mozartian flavor. Okay, that's enough of that. He came over to the house, he became lightheaded and happy, and he promised to write a cadenza for the piece. Later, he often said that the cadenza was actually finished. In addition, he would fancy that he toyed with Mozart, something about going from E flat major into E major and back again. Now, this is rather interesting for the concerto, clarinet concerto. Okay. He says it was in the suitcase in Domgord. Oh, again, my pronunciation is impossible. It was never found, but something better happened. We drank tea, or was it beer? This is Phelim talking. He talked and talked about Mozart, about winds, etc., but all of a sudden he became quiet. Then he looked at us with his loving Finnish. He was born on the island of Finn, or is it Fine? Eyes. Gosh, I'm terrible with this pronunciation. Eyes, and promised us a wind quintet, but only if we would follow it up and carry it forward. In other words, if we would perform it. He confided in us that there was something in the way we handled our instruments that especially enthralled him, our different human natures, and this is the point that we need to know about, reflected the individuality of our instruments. And he said, there will, of course, be a variation movement where I will try to paint each one of you. Okay? So that is basically what I should write. Now, he finished the quintet in 1922. I'm going to speak a little bit about that quintet. And promised each of the members of the group a concerto. He only lived, however, to complete two of these concertos. In 1926, he completed the flute concerto, and here, the clarinet concerto, I would say, was interesting because after he wrote the flute concerto, as is written here, this is again Phelim writing himself, he was reminded of his promise to write concertos for his friends by his friend Carl Johan Michelson in 1928. So Nielsen began working on the clarinet concerto for his friend Oxenvad in 1928 and completed it on August 15th of the same year. And Oxenvad performed it September 14th in a private concert at the home of Nielsen's friend Michelson, and played the official premiere on October 11th, 1928. And Oxenvad mentioned to his friend Nielsen, he said, about considering about the work's incredible difficulties. He mentioned that Nielsen, he said, must be able to play the clarinet himself. Otherwise, he would never have been able to find the most difficult notes to play. That's okay. Now, with that background, I will first, let me see, I have to see what do we have in terms of time. We do have a little bit of time. So, what I want to do is first play, oh come on, why is this, oh there we go. This I don't need. But I'm going to play, where is it, hold it, yes. So Danish folk music in here. This is something on what's called the Nyckelharper. It's a combination of a string instrument and a harp and a kind of piano. It's very interesting. Just to play.
You know, I'm looking
Oh,
at pictures from our trip.
That was so great.
I can't stand it.
My yoga mat?
I did not take your yoga mat. Oh,
Turn off the sun.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do. Why did that happen? I tried to get rid of that. Now I screwed everything up. Sorry. What is this? How do I get back on this? No, my computer went dead. I don't understand why. Oh, there we go. Okay. Stupid. I'm so sorry about this. I need to have a better way of doing this here. Okay, so it's a bit of it. Okay, now why am I playing this? Because of course Nielsen has this in his background, but also we can look at the piece and find other kinds of influences, many kinds of gestures that he used, and this piece is fascinating to me because of his use of different kinds of gestures. That is, and that's what I will explain in a minute. And so his use of what I call expressive icons actually goes beyond Carter, beyond Mozart, let's say, because he's actually uses actual even motives, whether they are folk motives or whether they are references to other composers, whether they are references to jazz. Okay, I go a little bit now into conversations that I had with both Jensko and John Kruse, and things that I was told about that. First of all, I was told there were places in the piece where Nielsen told Oxenvad that they are like Bach. You need to know that, no, okay. So this is very important little bit of information. They're like Bach. Then, also, that Nielsen was not happy in a certain way with his notation because he had the sense that the piece should be, in a way, cadenza from beginning to end. Okay, that's another interesting piece, an important piece of information that we need to know. And there are, let me get my clarinet now. And there are parts of the piece, right? For instance, here, this famous section, that place here, he said, hold the G a long time. In other words, this is a concert E. Okay, and that especially impressed me. Okay. Now, as Nielsen mentioned to his colleagues and his friends in the quintet, that he wanted to write in the variations movement of the quintet, he wanted to sort of describe each of the characters that was implied in their instruments. And in the concertos, the idea was probably to actually elucidate or explore the characters of his friends. Now, in the clarinet concerto, that would be, of course, Olga Oxenvad. I think that's the issue of the clarinet concerto is more complicated, because at the time he was writing it, he was actually not well. He had suffered his heart attack before, and I think that there were many, many things in his mind. But the concerto is and can be looked at as an exploration of personality. And let's just say that perhaps it is Oxenvad's personality. And Oxenvad was supposed to have either a temper, or some people have mentioned that he was bipolar, or suffered from manic depression, something we don't, something that we actually don't know exactly. But there is an incredible kind of tension in this piece, which can be looked at in a certain way as something that is bipolar. And this is one of the things I want to explain about the piece. And I we'll go over, and I probably don't have so much time now to actually do things. So I'm just going to start, and next week I will actually finish with the piece this way. But I come now, and I'm going to come here. The piece is basically in F, and it ends, of course, in F major. With this very haunting ending with it. With the clarinet here, this whole time, this F. This is sense of home, finally. And this is something that was unusual for Nielsen, because you look at many of his pieces, especially as if we go to his later works, let's say, and they involved what would be called kind of progressive tonality, where the tonality evolved to a point where the piece ends not in the same key where it began. Okay, but here has a great sense of coming home, in a way, to this F. Okay, then contrasting with that, we have an E there. And the tension between these two, the F and the E, goes throughout this work. And the E is in a certain sense like an alter ego, in a way, the F. And things are a little more complicated because Nielsen also is writing in a very classical way. And by that I mean that the dominance of these keys, which is, of course, C major or B major, are also very, very important. Now let's go back to the beginning of the work, and I look at this piece, and I look at it, and to me, its structure and its meaning very much has a lot more to do with either theater or even like a novel, something, and, or let's say, kind of psychological study, perhaps. We can. And it begins, of course, we have, and that defines the primary chord, which we see throughout the piece in most important places. We have this chord, and then we have its inversion. We have this also, which is the primary chord is the fifth and the second, and then the inversion would be the fourth and the second. And he does this in many ways, but you have that. So then we have two motives also, and we have here, and it's not an accident that in the very middle of the piece we have a section here which is a French horn solo. It's not a clarinet solo at all. And in that solo, it is made up completely of these primary chords. So we have, and I will just play them as the chords themselves. that separates these two major sections of the work. Now we can look at the work and divide it up in other ways, but the music in the first section and this second section here is very different. But yet they are combined, of course, by these chords. And you have which has this sort of sense of folk music there, but in the chords we have this. Which is in the inversion of course, this way. So it's as if in this section here, he inverts this, that, to give you, that's right, which then creates something very, very different, this way, but comes from the same motive. Okay. I would just jump around now and go back to the beginning of the piece, because the piece also works in a series of waves, we can say, and they all begin in a way which is incredibly normal. Just like the beginning, but until there, of course, that was very normal. But then even the whole thing, I will get back to this melody once more, but this whole thing is very, very academic in a completely obvious way, as if he's just pointing out that this is very normal music. It's just, this is totally normal. And because he starts with this fugue. It's in two voices, and then we start here. That way. But inside this very normal, this fugue, I mean, to think that you begin the concerto for clarinet or for any instrument with a fugue is very odd. You know, if you really think about it, but this is I think again, a psychological idea that this is very normal. This is normal, but inside this normal, even the melody. It's like whoa, and then. So we have inside, which you could hear in the little selection for the Danish harp that I played for you, right at that moment. You see, it's is there, and then he goes on, and again, perfectly normal. That's a weird fugue with these sections. And then the clarinet comes in and says, forget it. We have no more fugue. And we have here, this is but let's look at this melody and what he does to it here. And for that, oh no, I use the clarinet. The what do you call this instrument? The piano. What can I do? So we still have the D, it's still F major. But then we go to here. Oh, I'm in D minor. And then, something else. And then A minor. F major. And then C major again. And then we begin with our psychological study, although we had a prelude to that, because the orchestra comes in half step too high. There. Now, what Nielsen does also is his primary chord, and then he distorts, in a way, by half steps. And these, again, these expressive half step gestures are very, very important in this. So here, also, we have. And then all. They're going down to C sharp here. And what does C sharp have to do with F major? Except, which we will see more of. Then, okay, and these notes become more and more important because this is the F and the E, F, E, F, E. And then, of course, the orchestra comes in. That way. And we go around this everything. Here we go. E flat, E, G, D flat, A flat, all around, but not the F. So again, it's like, whoa, where are we going? Yeah, and we end here. So nicely in B major. Here. So we're going from here there to that there. And from there we go in the nicest way, we go to E major. So here he begins his contrast of these two keys, the F, which are a half step apart, but the half step apart is actually, in a certain way, the farthest apart that you can be. Is it's going that way. And then together with that, he has the scales where he has the augmented fourth or the diminished fifth is the primary determining interval for this. Now, of course, what that is right in between. So the augmented fourth is in the middle of things, and also defines the, which we have here. Okay. And let's say we go to here, for instance. No, I'm here, and I just don't want to make a mistake. Yeah, so from there, then we have that. And this comes even before that, here. All this whole tone, which gives you a kind of sense of not knowing where you are exactly. And of course, the reason for that is because every note is the same there. That way. There, but moving up and down by half steps, and with this involved here. Okay. I think that I have to stop, but I just want to go to mention about this G. And the reason for the G, reason why Nielsen mentioned to Oxenrod, hold the G a long time, and what the meaning of this passage is. Of course, the snare drum comes in then, and I will actually start with this piece and go over this piece in detail next week. I'll do that. For those of you who read Japanese, there's actually a whole series of articles I've written about this. Many, I think it's more than 12, I think, the installments there were about Nielsen Concerto in Japanese, in the Japanese magazine, which is called Pipers. So anyone who reads Japanese or would like to try to read Japanese, you can find my article there. But now the G. Why is this G, and why did Nielsen actually tell that to Oxenrod? I had a very funny conversation with one of my former students where I mentioned this, and this hold the G longer, maybe because it was so difficult to play. It's possible, but that's not the reason. Now, this is the reason why. Because the G is a concert E. But remember, our home key, anyway, is F. So when we're going to this passage here, which should be something like that. So that we're here. So we have resolving to the F. But it's as if you want to go there again, but you can't. Somehow it doesn't work. So you're striving. I know I have to go up to the F, but I'm only on the G or the E, concert E. And that also explains his chromatic motion. So it's not simply that he writes, oh, I'm going to write something difficult. Okay. Oh, I'm so good because this is going to be hard for people to play. No. He's writing here something which has some of great psychological significance. So it goes up as if you're trying to reach this. And then it's you move on as if I can't do it. And then he expands that. This I will explain much more next week. And there's our whole tone, tritone motives that he's going to work on much more. There. And finally, of course, he moves on to where he goes to the F. Of course, the orchestra contradicts him completely with this. Okay, so I think that my time is up. I've been admonished right now that I'm going on much too long. And I will be back next week, and I promise I will begin and end. Well, maybe I'll end with something else, but at least begin with Nielsen, and we'll speak about it in. Great. I don't want to, but I need to say one other thing. Okay, and that I want to also next week show. First of all, how parts of the piece, which seem in a way random, like this one, that passage there, is actually very, very classical. And also, I will explain why the publisher of this work should be in jail. Should be in jail for the mistakes which the publisher has made in this way. Well, maybe not in jail, but should be sued by the family of Nielsen. Anyway, okay. This is very unfinished. I will continue next week. And everyone, be well. Take care. Thank you.